Senator Gatti on SB 38, 138. We'll have him read it into the record, Senator.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, we have Senate Bill 138 by Senator Gatti, which requires post-accident drug testing when a traffic accident involves serious bodily injury, and we have two sets of amendments.
Okay, you want to read the amendments into the record, sir?
Mr. Chairman and members, we have House Committee Amendments 2865, which make technical changes, change serious bodily injury to suspected serious injury, provides a definition for suspected serious injury. It requires the Department of Public Safety and Corrections to adopt rules and regulations, including updating the Uniform Motor Vehicle Traffic Crash Report to implement the provisions of this proposed law, and it exempts an operator of any motor vehicle that does not receive a violation and is involved in a collision, or the operator of any watercraft that does not receive a violation and is involved in a collision, crash, or other casualty in which a suspected serious injury, from being required to submit to a chemical test or test of his blood, urine, or other bodily substance for the purpose of determining the presence of any abused substance or controlled dangerous substance as provided for in present law, or any other impairing substance. That's the first.
Okay. For the purpose of discussion, I'll offer the amendments.
I have one more.
You have more?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members, we have House Committee Amendment 2910. Amendments 1 and 2 make technical changes. Amendment number 3 states on page 2 between lines 18 and 19, insert the following. G, neither the law enforcement officer nor the law enforcement agency employing the law enforcement officer shall be liable civilly or criminally for any action or omission taken in response to this section.
all right, I've been informed by staff that we cannot accept the amendments in global. We'll have to do them individually. Would you give us the first amendment again?
The first amendment is House Committee Amendment 2865.
Okay, and what that does?
Okay, that one, amendments 1 through 4 make technical changes. Amendments 5, 6, 8, and 9. 5, 6, and 8 change serious bodily injury to suspected serious injury. It requires the Department of Public Safety and Corrections to adopt rules and regulations, including updating the Uniform Motor Vehicle Traffic Crash Report to implement the provisions of this proposed law. It defines suspected serious injury, and it exempts an operator of any motor vehicle that does not receive a violation and is involved in a collision, or the operator of any watercraft that does not receive a violation and is involved in a collision, crash, or other casualty in which a suspected serious injury, from being required to submit to a chemical test or test of his blood, urine, or other bodily substance for the purpose of determining the presence of any abused substance or controlled dangerous substance as provided for in present law, and any other impairing substance.
Okay, I'll offer that amendment. Any objections to offering the amendment or adopting the amendment? Seeing and hearing no objections, the amendment is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Fleming.
The next amendment is House Committee Amendment 2910. Amendments 1 and 2 make technical changes. Amendment 3 states the following. On page 2, between lines 18 and 19, insert the following. G, neither the law enforcement officer nor the law enforcement agency employing the law enforcement officer shall be liable civilly or criminally for any action or omission taken in response to this section.
Okay. I'll offer that amendment up. Are there any objections to the amendment, adopting the amendment? Seeing and hearing no objections, the amendments are adopted. Senator Gatti, on your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll cut this kind of short because Representative Cruz had a companion bill. He and I represent the Grantham family. They live up near Benton, Louisiana. And this tragedy happened, as y'all recall from the meeting when Mr. Cruz and Ms. Grantham came down last time. Her 4-year-old daughter was killed in an accident. She didn't die at the scene. If she'd have died at the scene, they could have drawn blood and found out that this man who hit them was probably most likely on drugs. But young Katie Bugg did not die at the scene because of the heroic efforts of the Bossier Fire Department, the state police, and many other first responders. She survived for about 7 days on life support. The injury she received was categorized as a internal decapitation, which means that her spine was severely injured at the neck. When she was taken off the respirator, she passed away. She did not breathe on her own for very long. And that was so that she could be an organ donor. And I don't think it's necessary, Mr. Chairman, to put you through that story again. It's pretty heart-wrenching, but I did want to give Ms. Grantham the chance to speak if you deemed it necessary. However, I know she doesn't mind telling her story, but I do know that it's hard on a parent who's lost a child to keep talking about it. So I would defer to you with that if you think that's necessary.
Well, I certainly will yield to Ms. Grantham, and because this is the people's house, and she has a right to talk. And if she wants to share it with us, I would certainly not discourage that, but it's up to her.
I can.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. She has a short presentation.
Just give your name again, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Morgan Grantham. Thank you for allowing me to be here again. I don't think that I'm going to rehash all of the details of it. I don't think that that's necessary. One of the things that really weighs on me, just as a parent and as a citizen and as a teacher, is that we expect everyone around us to do the right thing. We are doing the right things, and we assume that they are doing the right things as well. I expect my kids to do the right things. I expect the people, my fellow teachers to do the right things. But I also feel very strongly that we have to hold people accountable for the choices that they make, whether it be your kids, whether it be your students. And so when you make a choice to commit a traffic crime and someone is hurt, I really feel strongly that that you should be accountable to whatever it is that's in your system that could be impairing your judgment. It may not be anything, but it may be something. And we should know, if my daughter was hurt by a man that has a history of drug abuse. He's a meth addict. But because my daughter wasn't deceased on the scene, we will never know how impaired he was. But we do know that he was impaired before that. We know that he has been impaired after that. We know that his decisions have, my daughter dying has not changed the course of his life. He has continued on his path of opioid abuse and meth addiction with little to no consequences, because our accident was seen as just a traffic matter, and it wasn't a traffic matter. He committed a traffic crime and he killed someone. It wasn't immediate, but my daughter never breathed on her own again. She barely made it to the hospital. She lasted minutes after we removed the respirator. That's not the way that it should be. That's not a reasonable outcome to committing a crime and seriously hurting someone. And so that's we're not asking for anyone that makes a mistake to be drug tested. It's only if your mistake can kill someone. If your mistake results in someone being transported from the scene in an ambulance with their teeth clenched, with non-reactive pupils, who 10 minutes before was chewing gum and telling me a joke about her birthday party, that's the circumstances that we have to hold other drivers accountable on our roads. And so I appreciate your consideration for this bill, and thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Yes, we did hear this bill before on Cruz, and again, my condolences to you. My question is, So why are we adding on amendment number 2910 to exempt the law enforcement officer or the agency employing the law enforcement officer? I thought the idea of this bill was to make sure that it happened. So my question is, if we adopt this amendment or we let it leave here and go to the House floor with this amendment, what does it do if they decide that they know that person on the scene and they don't want to give that person? And a lot of the smaller municipalities, I'm with you. For the most part, I think law enforcement does the right thing at the right time. I told this a couple of weeks ago in, I think, criminal justice, I hit somebody who walked out in front of me and they died, right? They immediately put me, but he wasn't dead when he left the scene. They immediately put me in the back of the vehicle and they took me straight to be drug tested and all of that immediately. I think that's what should happen because, of course, I wasn't impaired. He was, but I was not. But my point is, why are we putting an amendment in here to exempt law enforcement if they don't do what this bill says to do?
Thank you, Representative Marcel. There's Lieutenant Burns is here from the state police to answer that.
So, Lieutenant Robert Burns, Louisiana State Police. Representative Marcel, the reason why we felt it was necessary to add that piece of language to the bill is right now the serious bodily injury statute is being updated and it's becoming more and more complicated on a federal level through NHTSA. The issue that we have as a department is we're asking law enforcement officers to make a judgment call based upon certain criteria in the definition, such as paralysis or pain or things of that nature, to classify an injury as serious when the law enforcement officer on the side of the highway doesn't have any medical training past just what's basically required for the most part. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Well, would you agree that typically when it's these type of injuries, there's EMS that comes on the scene that does have some of those medical, the medical professions that are there can say whether this is a serious bodily injury or not? In most cases?
Yes, ma'am. The medical professionals will be there, but it's not, the law doesn't make it incumbent upon the EMS personnel to draw the blood. That falls solely on the shoulders of the police officer making that determination at the scene. Just a point of clarity, the department is getting sued in both directions. We don't draw the blood. We get sued by the families for damages for failing to act. We do draw the blood under Birchfield versus North Dakota. We're getting sued for unconstitutional search and seizure of blood without a search warrant. We're trying to figure out the best balance for the department from a legal standpoint to satisfy horrible cases like the poor Grantham family's been through, and then also on the department side to where we do draw the blood and then we turn around and get sued for unconstitutional search and seizure.
When do you think that report would be available, or those changes in the federal law would be available?
Yes, ma'am. So the crash report is currently being updated. It was just a month ago in April. The new NHTSA standard for serious, it's now called suspected serious injury, has gone into effect. Like I said, the crash report is being updated to reflect those categories. And if you read the definition of it, I think it's in one of the amendments.
So it has gone into effect,
Mm-hmm.
but you still want us to put extra protection in there for law enforcement if they don't do it. So it's in effect. Let me see if I'm lost.
Yes, ma'am. So the definition has been adopted for the NHTSA standard for serious bodily injury. It's a category. I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 10 categories.
Does it include the things that are in this bill?
I believe.
I think this amendment covered it.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Amendment number 2865, page 2. Everything from between line 1 to line 15. That's the definition that is being put onto the crash report in line with the NHTSA standards for suspected serious injury.
And I'm gonna let somebody else speak. But my question would be, if these things have already been adopted,
Mm-hmm.
the suspected serious injuries and the serious bodily injuries already been adopted.
Yes, ma'am.
Why then would we put another layer of protection on them not being able? I'm trying to figure out.
Sure.
Why couldn't they conform to this law if we passed it? Why would it? What would change about us adopting this law without the protection for the police? Because I could see a scenario where, when a small town, the sheriff knows the kid's father, whoever just ran over somebody, and they opt not to take the blood. So, and at the same time, then somebody's seriously injured or dies after they leave the scene. So what this does is protect that officer or that agency from being sued, in my opinion. But that's all I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Brown.
This is not a question, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time, I'd like to move favorable on this bill.
Okay, we have a couple other questions. Representative Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am concerned, along with the state police, about the fact that they are making decisions that they are not qualified to make, and not only that, but they are not doctors, and putting that responsibility on them to decide what is this and what is that, and what is this determined and what is that not determined. I would feel very uncomfortable at an accident, and they are trying to tell me about my family or someone else's family, something that they don't know. So I certainly agree with the officer here. I think that would be putting them in a bad situation, even though we know that paramedics is coming, but there may be a family member there, really upset, concerned, and pretty much start going off on them to say, well, you should be able to do this, well, you should be able to do that. So I certainly agree that that would be putting them in a situation that I would not support them being placed in that situation. And let me commend you all for the great job that you do, but still understanding where the lines are and making sure that you all don't go over the lines. So have you all had any accidents where you all have stepped over the line to try to make a decision related to an accident and the seriousness of that accident?
Well, currently the way the law states, it's for a fatality crash. So, it's one of those things where if someone is either deceased or they're not deceased, it's pretty objective. The issue that we've tried to work with Senator Gatti on is when you go from fatality to serious injury, it becomes subjective. What you deem to be, a certain type of injury, I might not deem to be a serious injury.
Right.
So that's why we've been working with Senator Gatti on trying to get this language correct so everybody is comfortable with it.
So at this particular time, do you feel that you all are there as far as that language, or there are still some concerns?
We're based upon the amendments that have been offered today. We are in agreement with Senator Gatti that the language addresses our concerns.
What that amendment does is pretty much not put you all into a holding where you're not qualified to be responsible for making that decision on that particular accident. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Polk.
I won't belabor this, but we had heard this from Representative Cruz the other day, Senator. I applaud both of you for bringing the piece of legislation, by the way. Is there any possibility you all two are going to get together to work on this instead of having one piece of legislation, or combined, or are we going to have two pieces of legislation?
Well, we never know what's going to happen as ships.
I understand that.
And we wanted to make sure the Grantham family's
Oh,
voice was heard
I'm all in favor of
to
that.
the end. I'm a lot less concerned for the family's voice being heard now that both bills have left their original house and they are being heard in committee. I think that has caused numerous debates, both in committee and behind the scenes. These bills have been double scrutinized, and they're going to continue to do that. And every step along the way, folks have been honest and open about the concept that Representative Norton brought up, which is really, with medical technology growing at such a fast pace, EMS folks are able to keep someone alive at the scene. 5 years ago, that person would have died at the scene. They would have either bled out. I mean, now they can inject them with some type of, not a chemical, but some type of material that'll clog their arteries bleeding, whereas 5 years ago we didn't have that. So I think that what Lieutenant Burns is really getting at, and what he said perfectly, was that they want to get off in this area where they can find out if someone's on meth or opioids when they cause a bad crash. And that the Grantham case was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. You have a purely innocent 4-year-old girl that was internally decapitated. If she had any other injury, she'd have been dead. But she lived for 7 days. So it's a really unique set of facts that caused all of us to kind of scratch our head and come together and really see if we can help the next Grantham family that runs into this. Because quite frankly, the reason we're here is because they're trying to grieve, but there was also a grave injustice. And we want to help families that are grieving by allowing them some form of justice. And this bill, the way we've cobbled it together and the 8 or 9 different hearings we've had, has really helped everyone kind of comprehend what's going on.
I'm certainly in favor of whatever is being done here to help any family, such as the Grantham or anybody else. I'm not.
Yes, sir, I completely understand.
My question didn't go, and I appreciate you closing on this bill too, by the way. But my question was, if in fact it gets there, there'll be 2 pieces of legislation that'll be similar. That's all I had.
Yeah,
but
well,
if so be it, go ahead.
Yeah, we're hoping they're exactly mirror images by the time we get through. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, you and I discussed this piece of legislation, and Ms. Grantham, I extend my sincere sympathy for your family, and I got your email, and I paused a bit just to get my thoughts together, because I did vote for this, or didn't object for this Representative Cruz's instrument to get out, because I think this was something that was worthy of a debate for the floor. I voted against it on the floor simply because, not that I'm objecting to a person on serious injuries having blood tests. That's not. But having been a state trooper, and I didn't go into state police as the superintendent. I went down at the lowest level, and I worked many of accidents. And when I started in 1978, funeral homes used to do our emergency response at accident scenes. Today, the technology and the first responders from our fire departments and our ambulance, EMS, and paramedics is probably second to none in the country. And like the Senator said there, the technology and some of the experiences we've had in war in Afghanistan and the Middle East has taught these people how to stabilize some traumatic incidents. But I also know I've worked in some rural areas where I was the only trooper for 3 or 4 parishes. And I distinctly, I'm always reminded of one night I worked accidents with DWIs. Once you arrest a DWI at a crash, he becomes your responsibility. And in many instances, it's just that one trooper. And he is then responsible for protecting the scene, doing all the things that needs to be done, but he still have a physical human being in his custody. And sometimes it doesn't afford him to go to the hospital immediately. And it really puts him, not that he doesn't want to, but he just physically cannot do it. And like the lieutenant said, I think everyone in this room, and I know I talked to numerous people in the state police. I talked to Captain Williams up in Troop G, because I really didn't want this to happen to another family, and I still don't want it to happen to another family. And I'm going to vote for this bill again, and it's a little bit better because of the amendment that's put on it. But I felt, I'm not a big email person, so I can explain to you what was my reason for doing it. And I knew Senator Gatti had a bill coming in. So I personally, and I think I speak for every member, we hear a lot and we see a lot. And we don't take the testimony and what happened lightly. We struggle to make the right decisions to ensure that your family and no other family goes through what you go through, but I applaud your advocacy. I respect your email to me, and thank you for being a good citizen and not just sitting and feeling sorry for yourself, but really trying to change our community. And for that, I really appreciate you. Thank you very much. Okay, members, we have a motion by Representative Terry Brown to move SB 138 with amendments favorable. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, SB 138 by Senator Gatti with amendments are reported favorably. Thank you, and thank you, Senator. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Chairman Anderson, this may be my last time to come before your committee also. I just want to let you know that I have enjoyed serving along with you, the wisdom, your mentorship, the gentle way you let me know when I'm on the wrong path. And I just appreciate your life of service, and I too hate that you're not going to be back.
Well, I appreciate you, Senator, and I wish all of my colleagues and friends on the other side Godspeed. And thank you for being that check valve when we get some things out of here sometimes that are sometimes crazy. Right. But thank you for your gentle and being a true gentleman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.